We good? Okay, there we go. Call this meeting to order. Thanks for everybody, for being here today. We're running 2 minutes late, so we will call this Senate time and not House time. We are going to start today. I think everybody knows everybody here, but we will do just some quick introductions. We'll start with Representative Williams.
Good morning. I'm Representative Laura Williams. I represent parts of Lenexa and Olathe and serve on the House Financial Institutions and Pensions Committee.
Representative Mike King, House District 74, which is Harvey County, western third of Marion County, southern third of McPherson County, and I live in Heston as my residence, and I'm on financial institutions for the House.
I'm Senator Brenda Diedrich. I represent Senate District 20, which is mostly Shawnee County and all of Wabunsee County, and I am chair of Financial Institutions and Insurance in the Senate.
Senator Ethan Corson. I represent Senate District 7 in Northeast Johnson County.
Senator Stephen Owens, Senate District 31, so all of Harvey County and northern Sedgwick County, and I live in Heston. So thanks for being here.
Reshoot, House District 25, Northeast Johnson County.
Good morning, Dan Osmond, House District 48. That's Johnson County, Overland Park.
And I am Nick Oisel, represent Southwest Wichita 97th District. I also chair the House Financial Institutions and Pensions Committee. And we'll just do a quick introduction of our staff here as well.
Mike Ditch, Legislative Research Department.
Ariana Waddell, Legislative Research Department.
Jackie Gutierrez, Committee Assistant.
Eileen Ma, Office of Revisor of Statutes.
David Weiss, Office of Revisor of Statutes.
All righty. Thank you, staff, for being here today and help putting this all together as well. We do have a senator that's late, so we will recognize and embarrass him. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was here early. Nobody was here. So.
Well.
Senator Mike Fagg, District 14.
Okay. And it is just a happy accident, and I'll have a conversation with staff about the amount of senators that are sitting on this side and my House friends over here. Just as a House rep, I don't like that too much, but I could also say that I look nice up here with senators. Just saying, guys. I mean, you never know. So, committee, we usually meet, this Financial Institutions Oversight Committee usually meets in the fall, October, November, historically, since we've had this. However, there have been some recent changes at Beneficient, and I thought it would be prudent to bring everybody in just to have a discussion about what's going on, the changes, the outlook in the future, the plans. So that's kind of what we're here for today. At the end of this committee, we will have a discussion on steps and how we move forward and what the plans are in the future. We will take questions from all the conferees after they're individually finished. So save your questions till the end of that conferee, but we will have the conferee answer right after they're done giving testimony. And with that, we are going to turn it over to David to just give us an overview of basically the TEFI Act and the statutory requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. I'll just kind of do a quick overview of what the TEFI Act, the Technology-Enabled Fiduciary Financial Institutions Act, kind of requires of both TEFIs and also the Office of the State Bank Commissioner as the regulator under the TEFI Act. Some of you, this may sound very kind of familiar to those on the committee from last year, because there hasn't been any statutory changes during the 25 session, so it's been pretty much the same as is. There was a bill introduced last session, House Bill 2235, that would have made some adjustments to the act. There was a hearing in House Financial Institutions and Pensions Committee back in February, but there's been no action on that bill as of yet, but that bill does carry forward into the 26 session, so it's still a potential in 26. But for the TEFI Act, there is the requirement that a TEFI make an application and receive approval for a charter. That's KSA 9-2302. All of these are in, the TEFI Act is in Article 23 of Chapter 9 of the Kansas Statutes Annotated in the banking area, banking statutes. So no TEFI shall engage in FIDFIN transactions, custodial services, or trust business until they have received a certificate of authority from the state and approved by the State Banking Board. And then there is a requirement under that statute that and if they are issued a charter upon compliance with the provision of the Act, that they make an applicable distribution that is an aggregate value equal to the greater of 2.5% of their financing balances, or $5 million, whichever is greater. And a portion of that distribution would go to the Department of Commerce to the credit of the Technology-Enabled Fiduciary Financial Institutions Development and Expansion Fund, and the remainder would be to qualified charities, which are defined in statute. The application fee, I will point out that there was a change to this application fee that was already built into the TEFI Act commencing July 1 of 2025, so at the beginning of this month. The fee, application fee is now $100,000. It had been $250,000, but as operation of the statute in July 2025, it is now currently $100,000, and that is a non-refundable application fee. The capitalization requirements for a TEFI are found in 9-2305. The required capital shall at all times be at $250,000 when the TEFI does not accept deposits other than alternative asset custody accounts. They maintain no third-party debt except debts owed to members of the TEFI or affiliates of the TEFI. And when the TEFI has secured an agreement from its members whereby the members agree to contribute additional capital to the TEFI to ensure safety and soundness of the TEFI. If a TEFI fails in any of those three requirements, they would be subject to capitalization requirements that are applicable to trust companies under the state banking code. And the capital of a TEFI shall be divided with 60% of the amounts as the aggregate par value of outstanding membership units, 30% as surplus, and 10% as undivided profits. The board of directors requirements for the TEFIs are found in 9-2306. You should have the business of the TEFI should be managed and controlled by a board of directors. The board would be not less than 5, no more than 25 members, and at least one member shall be a resident of Kansas. Annual meetings would be held in Kansas, and within 15 days of the annual meeting, the president or cashier of the TEFI would submit to the bank commissioner a certified list of members and the number of units owned by each member. The list shall be kept and maintained in the TEFI's main office and subject to inspection during business hours. Each director is required to take and subscribe an oath to administer the affairs of the TEFI diligently and honestly, to not knowingly or willfully permit any laws to be violated. A copy of each oath would then also be retained by the TEFI in the records for review by the bank commissioner staff during any examination. And the TEFI shall notify the commissioner if there's a change in the chief executive officer, president, or any directors, including in such TEFI's report a statement of past incurred business and professional affiliations of any new CEO, president, or directors. KSA 9-2307 requires reports to the bank commissioner. Each TEFI would be required to make a report on the FIDFIN transactions pursuant to generally accepted accounting principles, and calculate the TEFI's capital solvency by including the value of all tangible and intangible assets owned by the TEFI. 9-2308 is where the naming and advertising restrictions are found in the TEFI Act. TEFIs are prohibited from using in the TEFI's name the words bank or trust company without reference to FIDFIN trust or any other term that would tend to imply that the TEFI is a bank or trust company, unless the commissioner has improved in writing that the use will not be misleading. Other than indicating the TEFI is headquartered and chartered in Kansas, no TEFI should name or advertising infer or imply that the TEFI is endorsed by, and affiliated of, or otherwise connected with the government of Kansas. TEFIs are also required to maintain office space. That's under KSA 9-2309. They will maintain office space in an economic growth zone, which those are the rural opportunity zone the original rural opportunity zone counties, that's defined in statute. And then suitable office space is defined to mean at least 2,000 square feet of Class A office space, as utilized as the TEFI's principal office. TEFI shall also employ, engage, or contract with at least 3 employees to provide services for the TEFI in Kansas and to facilitate examinations required by the Act. The TEFI shall also perform FIDFIN transactions, custodial service, and trust business in Kansas. FIDFIN, though those transactions would be deemed to perform in Kansas if agreements are approved or signed in Kansas on behalf of the TEFI and at least 3 of the following acts are performed in the state. And there's either an annual account review, annual investment review, trust or custodial accounting, account correspondence, reviewing or signing trust documents or tax returns, or distributing account statements. And then the principal office shall be located in premises that are distinct and divided from any other office space, be located in the economic growth zone selected by the TEFI, and then have the name, charter, and certificate of authority prominently displayed in such office. The access to those office premises and shall be allowed for examination by the state banking board or the bank commissioner's staff. And then to the extent that the TEFI maintains any hard copies, they be secured in a fireproof cabinet or any other container to allow for maintenance and examination. And then for electronic records, a secure computer terminal or other secure electronic device that provides access to the records to facilitate efficient and effective examination. The TEFI's fiduciary and required distribution authority is in 9-2311. This is that then if a TEFI engages in FinFin transactions, they shall be a fiduciary, subject to duties of standards of utmost care and loyalty associated with a fiduciary, and they're deemed to be exercising fiduciary powers from such all FinFin transactions. TEFI shall distribute or cause to be distributed of assets in a value equal to 2.5% of the FIDFIN transactions or originated during the calendar year. A portion of those distributions would go to the Department of Commerce, to that Technology-Enabled Fiduciary Financial Institution Development Expansion Fund, and the remainder would also go to those qualified charities selected by the TEFI. TEFIs are also required to provide disclosures to customers. TEFI will disclose to customers the information required by rules and regulations adopted by the commissioner to ensure that the customer is informed regarding the nature of the customer's transactions with the TEFI, taking into account the sophistication of the customer. There's also notification requirements when engaging a party to provide certain services on behalf of the TEFI. They have to provide this notification to the commissioner when they have a party to advise or assist in the performance of the FIDFIN transactions, perform any FIDFIN transactions, license internet-related services, web services, software, mobile applications, etc. License FIDFIN products or forms, perform any other services that TEFI would be authorized to perform under the Act, and employ another TEFI to perform any services that a TEFI is authorized to perform. Whenever a TEFI causes to perform for such causes services to be performed for the other TEFI by contract or otherwise, the performance shall be subject to regulation examination by the commissioner to the same extent as if that original TEFI was performing the services itself. And then there's a little bit on custodial services, specifically under 9-2313. The TEFI is to implement all account statement, internal control notice, and other standards applicable by state and federal laws and rules and regulations, maintain IT best practices relating to alternative assets they hold in custody, fully comply with the federal and anti-money laundering, customer identification, and beneficial ownership requirements, and take all other actions to comply with the requirements of this particular section. And then again, in these custodial services instances, the TEFI is a fiduciary and shall be subject to the fiduciary duties. And moving on to the requirements that the Office of State Bank Commissioner, the OSBC, has under the Act. The Commissioner under KSA 9-2302G shall notify TIFI applicant of the approval or disapproval of any application, and any final action approving or disapproving an application for a TIFI charter shall be subject to review in accordance with the Kansas Judicial Review Act. The OSBC also assesses fees and examination expenses under KSA 9-2303. The commissioner makes an estimate of the expenses to be incurred by the office during a particular fiscal year in an amount not less than $1 million. The commissioner sends a statement of each assessment on July 1 of each year to the TEFI. And the commissioner shall allocate and assess each TEFI on the basis of the TEFI's total FinFin transaction balances, effected in the last December 31 report filed with the commissioner. And then all of those monies received from such fees and assessments are, with 75% of those monies being credited to the Bank Commissioner Fee Fund to support the regulation examination of the TEFIs, and then 25% goes to that fund in the Department of Commerce for the development and expansion of TEFIs. Under examinations, that's 9-2307B. When examining a TEFI, the commissioner shall consider that collateral underlying assets are volatile in nature, and such volatility has been accepted by the members and customers of the TEFI. Respect the form, treatment, and character of the FinFin transactions, notwithstanding the treatment or characterization under for tax purposes. Evaluate whether available capital, including the agreement of TEFI's members to contribute capital, exceeds the TEFI's obligations, determined in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Evaluate the background qualifications of a TEFI's executive officers and directors, internal controls, audit processes, and then adherence to policies and procedures. And then to evaluate the profitability of a TEFI. However, profitability shall not be a consideration if sufficient capital and equity exist in the business, including without limitation, membership capital, surplus, undivided profits, and commitments by members to contribute additional capital. The Office of the State Bank Commissioner is the regulatory body, so they have the authority and the requirement to adopt rules and regulations to help regulate these TEFIs as they're necessary to administer the Act. It's KSA 2322. And then finally, the office is required to appear before this committee each year to present a report on the fiduciary financial institution industry. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I can stand for any questions.
Thank you, David. Nobody will ever accuse you of not being thorough in your explanations. Committee, do we have any questions? Representative Shu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. David, is there anything in the Act that is a punishment or anything like that if a TEFI is in violation of one of the requirements of the Act?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, there's nothing specific in the TEFI Act that speaks about punishments or any sort of penalties or anything like that beyond just, I mean, you might have to fall back ultimately on like the state banking code, but there's nothing in the Act specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Committee, any further questions for David? Seeing none, thank you, David. You can get a drink of water now. Up next, we have the Office of Banking Commissioner, David Herndon, who is our State Banking Commissioner. David, welcome to the committee, sir. It was a good chatting about baseball earlier.
I've been a lifelong baseball fan. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner and members of the committee. My name is David Herndon, and I am the Kansas State Bank Commissioner, and appear before you today to update you on the Technology-Enabled Fiduciary Financial Institution Act, or the TEFI Act, and the activity in the state of Kansas from the perspective of my agency, the Office of the State Bank Commissioner. It's referred to as the OSBC. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm joined today in person by OSBC Deputy Bank Commissioner Tim Kemp and OSBC General Counsel Brock Rayler. Our two TEFI examiners, Aaron Emerson and Christy Starnes, who do not office in Topeka, appear remotely. So the OSBC's mission is to ensure the integrity of regulated providers of financial services through responsible and proactive oversight while protecting and educating consumers. The 112 staff members of OSBC seek to accomplish this mission by ensuring the faith and reliable supervision of 158 state-chartered banks and savings and loan associations, 43 state-chartered trust companies and trust departments, 1,944 mortgage loan companies and branches, 7,787 mortgage loan originators, 189 money transmitter companies, 664 supervised lender companies and branches, 21 credit service organizations, 4 earned wage access services providers, that an industry that was created last year or approved last year by Kansas, and 1 TEFI, the Beneficient Fiduciary Financial LLC, or BFF. Frankly, we're unable to meet that mission towards the TEFI due to the restrictions imposed by the TEFI Act. Beneficient is a subsidiary, or BFF is a subsidiary of Beneficient, a publicly traded company whose stock is traded on the NASDAQ exchange under the symbol BENF. Beneficient is headquartered in Dallas, Texas. Beneficient is also the parent company of several other subsidiaries, making those entities affiliates of BFF. Many of the affiliates interact with BFF, and since by definition, a holding company actively maintains control of their subsidiaries, whether they are hands-on or hands-off owners of those subsidiaries, a holding company is expected to be a source of strength to the subsidiaries. Consequently, we monitor the financial condition, the management activities, and the public reporting of Beneficient and its subsidiaries through conversations with the company's senior officials, its filings to the Securities Exchange Commission, or the SEC, and press releases and press reporting. Very recent events at Beneficient have created significant financial and managerial stress on that company, thus elevating OSBC's level of concern to the subsidiary BFF. My comments today will focus on the single Kansas TEFI in existence and those recent developments at Beneficient since my last appearance before this committee, which was on November 21st, 2024. OSBC has conducted an examination, and that examination concluded 1 week ago today on July 23rd, or excuse me, 1 week ago yesterday. It was led by the examiners Emerson and Starnes, who are appearing remotely today. The scope of our examination included a review of BFF's compliance with applicable laws and regulations found in Chapter 9 of the Kansas statutes annotated and amendments thereto, specifically the Kansas TEFI Act passed in 2021 and amended in 2022, codified in KSA 92301 through 92327. Additionally, our exam monitored the progress on addressing and resolving, when necessary and possible, findings from previous exams. This examination did not include aspects of the Bank Secrecy Act and the anti-money laundering laws, which are referenced as BSA/AML laws, or information technology guidelines, as those will be addressed in subsequent exams. We held an exit meeting to communicate the exam findings on July 23rd. Attendees at that meeting from OSBC were Mr. Emerson, Ms. Starnes, Deputy Commissioner Kemp, General Counsel Rayler, and me. Representing BFF were its directors Jordan Bartell, Pete Kangani, Alan Dinas, Derek Fletcher, and Bruce Schnitzer, along with Beneficient Interim CEO James Silk and outside counsel Jeff King, who only attended the first part of the meeting. Mr. Fletcher, Kangani, and Schnitzer are also directors of Beneficient. As I've reported to you before, exam findings pursuant to KSA 91712A are confidential between OSBC and the examined party's board of directors. So neither OSBC, BFF, or any of its directors, officers, or stakeholders may disclose or make public in any manner the examination reports, its findings, recommendations, or directions. Therefore, I'm prohibited from discussing our specific findings in detail. But I can report that the written report of examination is being prepared now and will be presented to BFF's and board, with each BFF director signature required, attesting to their personal review of the report of examination. That written report will be available in the coming weeks. But as a result of the examination, OSBC will institute 2 oversight provisions. First, some sort of formal corrective action will be rendered by OSBC to BFF's Board of Directors addressing the findings, and 2, OSBC will commence a continuous exam posture for BFF, meaning that instead of an annual examination, we will have examinations underway without specific start or end dates, permitting BFF to provide updates or remediation processes with finally feedback from the OSBC. I mentioned earlier that we monitor BFF's parent company, Beneficient, but we don't regulate the parent company or any of the other subsidiaries or affiliates of BFF. Therefore, we do not conduct any sort of examination on Beneficient or those other entities. However, several public disclosed adverse events have taken place at Beneficient that have elevated our concern about the waterfall effect on BFF. Some of those events are, 1, Beneficient, the publicly traded company, submitted a notification of late filing to the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, or the SEC, for its annual report on Form 10-K for their fiscal year that ended March 31, 2025, within the initially prescribed 90-day time period. They disclosed in their intent to file the annual report on or before July 15, 2025. As of yesterday, there was no indication that that report had been published. But the required 10-K for the prior fiscal year includes Beneficient's financial statement dated March 31, 2024, with an audit report prepared by the company's CPA firm. That audit contains a lack of going concern clause, meaning that the auditors have reason to believe that the company is on the verge of insolvency. The fiscal year-end 2025 audit has not been filed. 2, Beneficient stock price has fallen to a level resulting in a delisting notice from NASDAQ earlier this year due to its continued noncompliance with NASDAQ's minimum $1 bid price requirement. The company requested and was granted a 180-day extension that expired earlier this month. We understand the company plans to, and perhaps has by now, and probably has by now, requested a hearing to stay the suspension. But if that extension is not granted, and I have no reason to believe that it will not be, the stock is still listed because the stock is still listed, and yesterday closed at 36 cents, well below the $1 minimum. It would certainly make it difficult or impossible for stockholders, some of whom may be Kansas residents, to sell their stock or transact their stock. 3, former Beneficient employees have brought claims against Beneficient with the Texas Workforce Commission, and press reports have revealed that those former employees have been awarded judgments for unpaid compensation. The reporting states that the commission also declared Beneficient violated the Texas Labor Code and assessed a penalty against them. 4, Brad Hepner resigned as CEO and board chairman of Beneficient, the company he founded and represented in several appearances before this committee and members of the Kansas Legislature. A Beneficient filing with the SEC that's required announced his resignation and included a copy of an email sent by a law firm representing Mr. Hepner that said he was stepping down as of June 19, 2025. The SEC document discloses that Mr. Hepner refused an interview request from attorneys hired by Beneficient's Board of Directors Audit Committee, and that he declined to transfer control of preferred stock in Beneficient and to surrender shareholder voting rights to the company stock. The email also said, and I'm quoting, Mr. Hepner believes the only viable course for the company at this point is an orderly wind down of operations, end quote. This revelation directly contradicts the testimony Mr. Hepner provided this committee last November when he assured the committee of the bright future, including the construction of an underground parking facility below the promised new grocery store in Heston, Kansas, that originally was promised in 2021. And that was to be funded to a significant degree with transactions closed by the TEFI, as you heard earlier, requiring the 2.5% of the deals be paid to the Kansas Economic Development Fund. That's pursuant to the TEFI Act. Neither the grocery store has opened nor the parking garage has commenced construction. These negative events have only reinforced the opinions that I have previously expressed to this committee, that the Kansas TEFI Act has not produced the results nor met the expectations originally intended. Kansas has not become ground zero for the TEFI industry. To my knowledge, no other state has considered or is considering legislation similar to or modeled after the Kansas TEFI Act. No other entity or individual has applied to my office for a TEFI charter, nor have we even received an inquiry regarding the process. Therefore, as I suggested in my November 2024 testimony, I continue to be of the opinion that the Kansas legislature should consider withdrawing BFF's TEFI charter and repealing the TEFI Act in its entirety, thereby eliminating any legislative or regulatory oversight duties of the TEFI industry, which is found solely in Kansas and exists solely with BFF. Trust companies in Kansas are permitted to hold alternative assets in certain trusts, so my recommendation is to eliminate the redundancy and duplication caused by the TEFI Act. I'm not suggesting that BFF should be legislated out of business, but I do believe the company should succeed or fail based on the market in which it operates without influence or interference by my agency or the Kansas governor. Beneficient has announced an interim CEO and BFF has appointed new directors. It's starting over, and I wish the new management team success. But it can achieve those successes without being chartered and regulated by the OSBC. The illiquid asset market already exists. It existed when BFF received its charter, and the Kansas legislature should consider starting over as well. Bank and business owners routinely have strategic plans that have exit strategies. I've written some of those plans. I've read countless more. And the legislature needs to consider an exit strategy as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I do want to verify with IT, we do have folks watching online, as Commissioner Herndon referenced. Okay, thank you. Committee, do we have any questions? We'll start off with Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I certainly think we can agree that the TEFI Act hasn't worked out quite as we had planned. However, you continue to lobby for the TEFI's elimination. Can you tell me how Kansas or Kansans have been hurt by the TEFI Act?
The TEFI Act does not allow for deposits to be held, as you heard earlier. I can't speak to if there are any Kansans who have shares of the parent company that were motivated to purchase those shares by the TEFI Act, but I can say that if there are some, they have lost significant value in the declining value of the stock.
Okay, so other than losing value in shares of stock, which I can point to hundreds of companies in my portfolio across the nation that I've lost shares in stocks that I've invested in, can you tell me how any other Kansans or Kansas has been hurt by the TEFI Act?
No, sir.
Thank you. If I may?
Yes, please.
Excellent. So it's also my understanding that Beneficient has delivered over $3 million in annual fees over the last 4 years to the OSBC. You were tasked with developing rules and regulations over the industry. Has that been done? And if not, what has that money been used for?
The money that you are referring to is probably the assessments that are established in the TEFI Act at a minimum of $1 million annually. Out of that $1 million annual that has been paid since the TEFI Act was became in place, 75% is retained by the OSBC and 25% is transferred to the Commerce Department. The rules and regulations side of it have been, initially, that was part of the amendments that were made to the 2021 Act that were made in 2022. Others, for example, the reduction in the application fees and that sort of thing were also made as part of the negotiations with principals of Beneficient and other items like that. To get into more of the specific details, I'm afraid, gets very, very close to violating the confidentiality acts that I'm required to abide by.
One quick follow-up, if I may. Thank you. So we're about to hear from Commerce that's going to share that they've distributed over $3.3 million to Kansas communities under 5,000, which is quite remarkable. I don't know of another industry that started up in the last couple of years in Kansas that's contributed that much to Kansas. So if I'm understanding correctly, Beneficient has given and distributed over $3.3 million to Commerce, plus another million, because there's a total of $4 million in assessments that have been paid. $1 million going to Commerce, $3 million to your office. So $3.3 million has been distributed. OSBC has received over $3 million that they can't specify where it has been spent. We don't have rules and regulations, which was part of the responsibility, and you can't provide any indication of how Kansas or Kansans have been hurt by the TEFI Act. Yet year after year, you continue to come in here and lobby for its elimination. Please help me understand that.
As I said, the money that we have received through the assessments is established by the TEFI Act. It's a minimum of $1 million. We were not involved in creation or establishing that level, never have been. We were involved in reducing the application fee by 50%. The Commerce funds have received 25% of each of those assessments, so they've received $1 million of the, in cash of the money that you've seen. The TEFI Act also allows for Commerce to receive non-cash assets. I can't speak, nor will I try to speak to Commerce as to what those assets have been, if they've received them, how they've been funded, how they've been converted to cash, or that sort of thing. I'll let Commerce do that. You are correct. I have advocated that the TEFI Act has some flaws that prohibit me, as I testified earlier today, that we are unable to provide the mission that we have of protecting the oversight of a regulated industry like we do all of the other financial institutions that we regulate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think my questions have not been answered, but thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Commissioner, I just wanted to follow up on something you just kind of mentioned there. The $1 million annual assessment fee, does that initially go to your office and you send off the $250,000 to Commerce? Or what does that mechanism look like?
It's collected by the treasurer.
Okay.
And $750,000 is credited to the OSBC, $250,000 to the Commerce.
Now, do you know, and if the TEFI Act allows, of that $1 million assessment fee, was that always paid in cash?
It's paid to us in cash, yes, sir.
Okay. So, but you're unsure if it's paid to the treasurer in cash and then the treasurer?
Out of the assessment, it's paid in cash.
Okay.
What I'm unsure of is the FIDFIN transactions.
Yeah, the 2.5%.
Correct.
Yep, got it. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Further questions for the Commissioner? Representative Williams, and then Senator Fagg after.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for being here today. In your testimony, you do discuss in your review the Texas file claims of the workforce. Have those claims, in your knowledge, been resolved, or are those still an ongoing issue with Beneficient and those wage claims being paid out?
I learned of those claims through public reporting And I do not know the status, if they've been paid, if they've been appealed, objected to, or what authority the Texas workforce has, or those individuals, at least two, in the press articles that I read, indicated that they held judgments, but I have no idea of what the status is.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we may need to get some information maybe from the revisor's office on and how or how not that judgment is enforceable in the state of Kansas, because I've seen some reports, and I know there's some individuals that would like us to act in the state of Kansas. However, as much as I would like to take over the state of Texas with the Kansas government, we don't really do that. So I'd like to get with the revisor's office at some point to see what and what not we as the Kansas government can do on that front. Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Commissioner, for your presentation. Since Camel Ratings is for traditional banks, have we developed any kind of rating process for the TIFI program?
No, sir. We have not.
Have we discussed that at all?
We have tried, but the TEFI Act prohibits us from considering generally accepted accounting principles in terms of capital, the nature of the business. So that is the C of the camels. The A is asset quality. Yeah. These are, by definition, an industry that purchases illiquid assets that generally do not produce or produce only minimal cash flow for an extended period of time. So the terms and conditions are significantly less than a traditional bank's loan portfolio would be. The management, we paid particular attention to the most recent developments regarding Mr. Heppner, but prior to his departure, we also witnessed there were several senior managers and directors who resigned their positions, so that would have an adverse impact. Earnings have been limited to BFF, and as I mentioned, we have not seen the 25 fiscal year end audit, so I can't speak to that. There is only liquidity available is if the assets that are by definition illiquid are sold again on the illiquid asset market that exists, and presumably that would be a transaction that would provide some liquidity, but also generate below market values or below par values of the asset. And then the S, the sensitivity is not applicable because that would deal with the presumption of the deposits and asset balance of interest rates.
Sure. So I was really hoping that, because we've had some years at this, this is not a traditional bank. And we know that from the start with what it is. I always envisioned that we would come up with a process of how you would examine them. You know, what they need to look at in order to do this, trying to set up a program, hoping that other people would be looking at us too. So I guess that's one thing that I wish we had done. The $750,000, does that cover our costs for examining?
Yes, sir.
Do we have any left over?
Yes, sir.
How much do we have today?
I'd have to get back to you on that, but it's a sizable number.
Okay.
It does not cost us $750,000 to examine the TEFI.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Follow up on that. So those leftover funds, do we segregate those? So if we look next year and there's enough already being held to do an audit next year or an examination next year within those funds, theoretically, we could kind of wiggle around with the next payment in that $750,000?
I believe that would take a change in the TEFI Act that sets the $1 million as a minimum.
Yeah.
I can draw a comparison, though, that we assess banks, and when we have a surplus, we reduce the assessment that banks pay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of, and I'm possibly not envisioning that I know we've had some discussion. I don't know if we moved forward with it in the past with some kind of account, maybe through Department of Commerce to advertise TEFIs, kind of a marketing campaign. Maybe that's something we could look at. Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as I was kind of thinking about that, I would love to know what that amount is. So if you could share with the committee, that would be great. And at a minimum, if it's not being used in the OSBC, maybe we move it to Commerce and allow it to be let out through the seed grant program, the same way the other funds have.
Yeah, and that's definitely a discussion we can have. As far as examinations, you've indicated you just completed one July 23rd. Before that, when was the last examination?
Last in 2024. They were annual examinations. I forget the date specifics, but it was last year.
Was it around July-ish, about the same time
Probably.
every year? Okay. And how long do those examinations usually take?
This one took several months. This one started I think it started officially in February.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. Committee, do we have a Chair Dietrich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here, Commissioner. As always, you provide a lot of great information for us. So in all of your years in the banking world, we're talking about an organization now, an entity that's going to start over and restructure. That is not, I believe that's probably not uncommon when we have issues in traditional banks. Am I correct in that assumption?
For the most part, yes, depending upon what the start over involves. And I'm presuming that you're referring to what would the banker's position be if they had a borrower who was starting over. Again, it would be back to the strategic plan and an analysis of that. If starting over means that we're going to file a bankruptcy, a reorganization plan, then of course the bankruptcy court would be the responsible party. If we're going to bring in new shareholders, if we're going to bring in new management, then I, as a banker, would have the business decision to say I support or do not support your plan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Committee, any further questions for the Commissioner? Seeing none, thank you so much, Mr. Commissioner. All righty, committee up next, we're going to have Rachel Willis, Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Commerce, to give us an update on the seed grants and economic growth zones and all that with the Department of Commerce. Rachel, welcome to the committee.
Good morning. Thank you. Yes, Rachel Willis, Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Commerce. So I'm going to just walk through my testimony first, and then we can go through the PowerPoint here as well. So yes, as you've heard earlier this morning, in 2021, the Technology-Enabled Fiduciary Financial Institutions Act established the Technology-Enabled Fiduciary Financial Institutions Development and Expansion Fund, which is administered by Commerce. So after receiving that funding, Commerce developed a grant program called SEED. So we like our acronyms. This is Strategic Economic Expansion and Development. So the purpose of this grant is to support the economic revitalization of Kansas communities under that 5,000 population through investments of quality of life. The total amount of funding is dependent on the aggregated finance balances of the chartered fiduciary financial institutions. So on page 1 of my testimony, you can see the chart there. We have been able to host 3 rounds of seed funding. So in that chart, you'll see the available funding, which again fluctuates based on those finance balances. You'll see the number of applications we've received, the total amount requested in each of those rounds, and the number of applications we've been able to award. So you'll notice that this program is significantly oversubscribed each year that we offer it, which is a great problem to have, right? We've got too many requests and not enough money. The program has some very specific eligibility requirements. Those are listed at the bottom of page 1 and then on to page 2. Again, those projects must be in areas with population of not more than 5,000 people, and they have to be located in those original 78 economic development zones. We do require a 10% match. The maximum award amount has been most recently $25,000. It was $50,000 that first year, just because we had a larger pot to begin with. The projects must fit into specific grant project categories. Those include community vibrancy, childcare and seniors programming, libraries, and food retail. The project has to be completed within 12 months, so 1 year. And then the funds must be used for very tangible things, right? So they can't be used to support one-time programming like speaker fees, event fees or salaries, strategic planning, consulting, any of those things. It has to be very tangible. On pages 2 through 5 of my testimony, you'll see a list of all of the grantees for each of the rounds of grants that we've been able to host. So you'll see the county, the organization, the category that those projects fit in, and the amount requested. The last page of my testimony, we talk a little bit. We're excited. We're going to be able to host another round, so round 4 of seed funding. The application should open sometime in August, probably towards the end of August. The total amount of funding available for this round is right around $350,000, just a little less than that. The application window will be open again for about 60 days, so we anticipate being able to make those award announcements at the end of this year, beginning part of next year, which follows the normal calendar for seed. On the last page, too, I'll draw your attention. We've got QR codes as well as links, so you can see additional PowerPoint presentations that have pictures that describe the projects more in detail. So I just wanted to walk through some highlights here of Seed 3, or 3.0. We'll skip the first. There we go. We'll skip these two slides because it just describes the program as I just did. So this is one of the awards here in Wilson County. This fits into the community vibrancy category. So they wanted to do some updating to their local park. So you'll see new benches, picnic tables, and basketball courts, along with some other key features. This one is related to the food retail. So here, actually, the hospital partnered with a local business, and they were able to buy some new coolers and different shelving for this business so that they could offer some food as we think about food deserts and grocery stores in these small towns. Next up is in Harvey County. This is the Burton Community Foundation. This is one of my favorites. So the city of Burton received a plaque from the Daughters of American Revolution, and they wanted to create more of a park and a landing place for that plaque. So they used the seed funding to create a mural, park benches, and landscaping, and really kind of create an experience around this plaque that they had received. Here in Decatur, they were able to do some nice vinyl banners for their downtown. So again, community vibrancy, just making it, jazzing it up a little. Wabunsee, here they were working on their senior center. So they needed to do some improvements to the door as far as weatherization. They needed some new computers in that center and some new desks and tables that they could easily clean as needed. Next is Wallace. So here they actually, this one's another really cool idea and project. They turned an old church into a coffee and bakery business. So they were able to do some stuff with the flooring, put in some new cabinetries and appliances there. Again, speaking to that food retail and food deserts. Conway Springs, they wanted some new signage in their community as well as some new awnings on some downtown businesses. Here in Comanche, again, focusing on food retail. So they were able to do some new equipment that included ice machines and tables and chairs. And then they also did some community vibrancy work. So they did some more banners and those sorts of things downtown. Here is a project that focused on the library and did some other community vibrancy stuff. So with the library, there's lighting and flooring, and then did some work on a pickleball court. Oh, there we go. Clay County here, so they are again replacing some of that replacing the playground equipment. So you think of that old metal equipment that some of us may have played on. They're doing new plastic, just updated playground equipment. Haskell here, they're replacing their story walkboards at the library, as well as doing some new equipment, so some laptops that folks can check out for various reasons there in the community. Okay, I think that was it. So I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for that. I do have two quick questions. The first one is kind of following up on a question I asked the commissioner. Of this 2.5% transaction fees, has that all been paid in cash every time?
Yes, sir. So it has. So we also received some interest. So not stocks, but interest. I think it's a little more than 800,000, and there's some different rules and things that once that's sold or liquidated, then we would get that funding, but that's being held in interest. But the actual 2.5% of transactions has been paid in cash.
Okay, and to your knowledge or the knowledge of the Department of Commerce, every payment that has been required from Beneficient has been made?
Yes, sir, that's accurate. We just recently had a meeting with them, and we're fine-tuning some of our reporting requirements from them and are putting them on a specific schedule so that we just have better communication and know and can better plan for when we receive that funding so that we're ready to go with that next round of the seed grant.
Thank you for that. And I know we've discussed it in the past, and I'm not sure if we ever moved in on it. It was kind of like a marketing campaign for TEFIs. Did we ever move forward with that? Is there an account that has funds in it? How is that being utilized?
Yes, sir. So yes, according to the statute, we're supposed to set up a grant program and do marketing. And so we were waiting to make sure that everything got moving, right, and that those payments were made. And then we were looking at how best to advertise this, right? So this is a pretty niche thing, pretty unique, and we didn't know where the best place or what the best media strategy would be. And then with some of the recent news, if you will, about the company, we've kind of put a pause on what that marketing strategy looked like, just to make sure that everything was gonna be okay.
Okay.
So.
Do you have a number on the amount of funds that are in this marketing account, if there is any?
Yeah, so at this point, we've dedicated the funding just to the seed grant.
Okay, gotcha. So if we did move forward with a marketing campaign, that would come out of kind of the seed grant money. Okay, I got it. I believe Senator Owens and then Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that presentation. I had no idea that that Burton received some of that seed grant. So I would encourage anybody traveling down Highway 50 to swing off in Burton. That really turned out to be a beautiful park and a beautiful mural. And by the way, you can stop at the barn for the best chicken fried steak in the state. Just plug the barn there for you. So as I understand, the total number of dollars that has been or scheduled to be distributed is close to $3.7 million. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And is any of that taxpayer funds that you guys are receiving to distribute?
No, sir.
So if we followed through with the suggestion of the OSBC to completely repeal the TEFI Act, would the seed grant program and these communities continue to receive any funding?
No, they would not. The seed program would end.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. Makes you excited about things out in the rural area. So I think you guys have been doing a great job with that. One thing I'd want to make a comment or two is on the marketing side of this, because this is something new. There's nowhere else in the United States, and marketing is a big part of this. So I would encourage that Department of Commerce sits down with Beneficient and say, hey, where can we go? Give us some ideas. We need to be knocking on some doors and seeing how we can make this program work, because it's just not about Beneficient. We wanted other ones in this, and if we don't advertise it and people don't know about it, all they're hearing is the rough stuff they read in the newspaper. We need to get some positive stuff out there and get some other ones involved in this. I think there's such we were sold on there's such a big market out there that, so that would be my suggestion. I hate to see us spend money on seed money when we need to make sure that we got marketing money to keep this thing rolling. That's the first part of this. So just some ideas when you guys sit down and talk about this is try to kick some ideas from them and see where we go with that. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of follow up on that, you kind of laid out that you guys were in discussions on some kind of marketing plan. You've put it on hold. If you guys have a number, I'd be curious on how much it would take to fund that marketing plan. If you guys have that, you can just follow up with us after. I'd be curious on what that number is and what you guys are thinking with those funds. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think we got some reporters here in the room, so maybe we can provide the link to where those people can apply for it. But my question is, when it comes to those applications, are you denying applications? Do you have enough interest in that you are being able to have a good group to select from?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Yes, we're declining a significant amount, right? So on page 1, you'll see that first round in 2022, we had 2.7 million available for funding, and we received 4.7 million in requests. And so that kind of level of oversubscribed continues. So it was about $1 million oversubscribed in round 2. And again, almost $1 million there in round 3. So lots of interest, some really great projects in our really small communities that maybe don't have the opportunity or the capacity to apply for lots of other grants that the state offers or elsewhere. So.
And I just have one more follow-up. With that, I know that you have the categories of community vibrancy, childcare, senior programming, libraries, and food retail. Is there a way through the selection process you prioritize the need over, or how do you choose who gets that funding?
Yeah, so we have a rubric, and that rubric is shared. So if you go to the SEED web page, you'll be able to see the application and that rubric. And then those questions are weighted. And so for this one specifically, there's more weight given on the actual project description and the need for that project versus some of our other ones. There's lots of weight given to making sure that you've got all of your other kind of ducks in a row, right? Like, so you've got all your engineering studies and all of those things done when we're talking about HEAL and we're fixing up old buildings. There's lots of kind of pre-work that has to be done, so that's weighted differently. Here, it's just more about that specific project type and the need. We do always try to focus on making sure that our grants are touching all kind of corners of the state, and that we're finding and making sure that communities that maybe haven't been awarded a grant with Commerce are aware of this and are applying, because we think that this is one of the easiest grants that we have to offer and most feasible for them to implement and take advantage of.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair Dietrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here, Rachel. So when you were talking earlier about interest, where does that live? Is it the treasurer's office, your office? Where is it?
That's a good question. I believe it lives within the company, so that we don't necessarily have direct access to it.
You don't? Okay. Right. So my next question was, could you use those funds for any marketing strategies or plans that you might put into place? Because I didn't know where the money was, but...
Yeah, so I don't believe so. I believe that those would have to be sold or liquidated, and I think there's specific requirements for kind of that waterfall then to come to us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Fack.
One quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman. In any of these programs, Rachel, do you do any match funding, where you'll say, well, here's $50,000 when they do these programs? I just wondered if match funding comes into this at all.
Yes, so we do require a 10% match on the applicant. So just making sure that they've got a little bit of skin in the game, and then just trying to leverage and make the most out of these dollars, right? So trying to spread them out even further so they're not covering the entire project cost.
Senator, I fully expected you to make a request that we take all these seed funds and just kick it into the unfunded liability for Capers to help pay it off. We'd chip in the chair. We'd get there slowly. Representative King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rachel, in Commerce Department's experience, has the Teffy Act been a positive or a negative so far?
Yeah, in our experience, it's the only way that we would be able to provide this seed grant, and we think that it's been very positive. Again, these are really small communities across our state that oftentimes maybe don't have the capacity or the ability to apply for bigger grants, whether that's because of manpower, whether that's because there's a higher match requirement, lots of different reasons, right? So these are some pretty unique funds that have allowed us to support some really cool, meaningful projects across the state.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Rachel, kind of following up on that a little bit, I know OSBC had some recommendations in their testimony. From Commerce's point of view, as far as the seed grants or anything, is there anything you guys think that we could change in the Teffy Act to help you guys better facilitate these seed grants or anything like that?
I don't think so. We'll always take more dollars.
Yeah, well, won't we all? Okay. Any other questions for Rachel? Seeing none, thank you so much, Rachel. All righty, we are on to an update from Beneficient. I believe Derek Fletcher, President and Chief Fiduciary Officer, and I know, Derek, you do have a couple people with you. Was Mr. Silk, was he able to jump on?
He was intending to. I don't know if he is.
He is on. Okay, so we do have the interim CEO, Mr. Silk, online as well. So, Derek?
I am here, yes. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, thank you for allowing us to speak before you this morning. And Mr. Chairman, appreciate.
There we go. Appreciate you convening the meeting early to allow us to address some of these recent developments. My name is Derek Fletcher. I'm the President and Chief Fiduciary Officer for Beneficient Fiduciary Financial, BFF, which is the Kansas Teffy. I am joined by two colleagues today, James Silk, Beneficient's CEO, and Alan Dinas, Managing Director of BFF, as well as the company's counsel, Jeff King, with Crossroad Legal Solutions. As this committee knows, we have faced a number of challenges and headwinds in the past, and admittedly, you know, the business has not performed the way we had hoped and it really envisioned it would. And I'm going to discuss some of those headwinds in a moment, but I want this committee to know that kind of with the reset that Senator Dietrich mentioned, we're excited. We're enthusiastic about the opportunities that lie ahead. Despite, you know, the challenges that we have existed, Alan will share with you in a moment, we've delivered over $24 million of cash and assets to the state. And we're just optimistic that if we can get some of these headwinds behind us, what we may be able to do together with the state of Kansas. Second, and Commissioner Herndon mentioned this, that the annual report for the company has not been filed. But if you saw our notice indicating that it was not going to be filed currently, you may have seen that we reported that we expect to have positive net income attributable to our common shareholders of over $51 million, something that we're excited about. And then lastly, before I introduce James, we do have James as our CEO, and that's something that I can't be more enthusiastic about. He has already hit the ground running, meeting with counterparties. I'm going to talk about that in a moment, meeting with the board, meeting with management, and there's a renewed energy within the company that I will subscribe to James, his approach, and his leadership. So to really reintroduce James, James was with the company. He left in May of 2024. Before leaving, he was a member of the board of directors. He was our chief legal officer, executive vice president. He oversaw operations, underwriting, risk, the legal department. So very knowledgeable about the business, trained and practiced as an attorney with some international law firms. So just a great resume, as well as just a solid individual. So before getting into the current developments that I know this committee is interested in, I did want James to take a moment just to kind of give his insight and thought about where we are as a company, the direction that we're going to head under his leadership, and then we'll get into some of the details that I know this committee is interested in.
Thank you, Derek. Um, Thank you to the committee for having us. As Derek noted, I'm James Silk, interim CEO of Beneficient. I do apologize for the committee for not being there today in person. It's my second week, and with some travel conflicts, I just got back late last night, so apologies for that. I will be in Kansas frequently going forward alongside Derek and the team, and look forward to meeting those of you I haven't met and seeing those of you I have met again. So look forward to that. I was asked to return to Beneficient following Mr. Hepner's resignation. As Derek noted, I previously served as Beneficient's Executive Vice President, Chief Legal Officer from Ben's formation through the spring of last year. When I accepted the opportunity to rejoin Beneficient, I did so because I believe in Ben and I believe in what the company can be. Commissioner Herndon mentioned that Ben was starting over. I respectfully disagree with the commissioner on that. Going forward, Ben will be even more committed to the core principles of Ben as outlined with the OSBC. One of the reasons the board looked to me and why I came back was because I understand and appreciate what those core principles are, and what what representations we had made to the OSBC. So not starting over, but rather a renewed focus. In that regard, the competitive advantages that make Ben unique are still in place. Right, the market opportunity for Ben remains as attractive as ever, and I can tell you that the team at Ben is simply an incredible group that's committed to make Ben a success. And we at Ben define success by creating value for all of our stakeholders. And that includes significantly, as already noted, Kansas. Um, Derek has mentioned some of those, and I'm not going to rehash those here, but I will say in coming on board just within the past couple weeks that, hearing that, Ben had made a payment of $1 million to Kansas was something I certainly appreciated, because I know that Ben values its relationship with Kansas, is very aware of its obligations to the state, and has and will continue to honor and respect those obligations. I will leave it to Derek and Alan Dinas to address some of the more specifics and details, just given the amount of time I've had here. But I will repeat what Derek said. Ben has certainly faced challenges, and perhaps in a departure from a predecessor, I'll acknowledge success is not something that can be guaranteed. What I will say is that seeing the opportunities available to Ben just over the past 2 weeks has been incredibly significant, and I can tell you that I'm more enthusiastic today than I was 2 weeks ago. And what I can guarantee on behalf of myself and the rest of the management team is that we will lead the company going forward with integrity, professionalism, and civility. Integrity means we will be transparent and honest, even when it's hard. Professionalism means we'll uphold high standards in how we work, both with one another and to our partners. And finally, civility means we'll treat every person, every level, and every role with dignity and respect. And I should say that on my first day when I came back, I reiterated these 3 points to the management team, and it was in my first communication to all the employees of Ben. To Commissioner Herndon, I can tell you that I hear your continued skepticism, and I'll tell you it's on us at Ben, working together with your team to show you that Ben and Teffy's can continue to do what we can continue to do to benefit Kansas and all of our other stakeholders. We will disagree at times, obviously. You would not be doing the job of a regulator without identifying the areas that we can do better. I tell you, Commissioner, that I'm specifically committing, as is my team, to these principles: integrity, professionalism, and civility, and look forward to working together going forward. Before I turn it back over to Derek and Alice, I just want to leave the committee with this. Many of you in this room have supported Ben in the past and continue to support and believe in Ben. I'm here to tell you that this belief is not misplaced. I came back to Ben because I share that belief, and that we can make Ben a success and continue to grow with benefits to all of our stakeholders, and in particular to the state of Kansas. Thank you for your time. Appreciate your understanding, given my limited time and my my role here in terms of what I would cover. And with that, Derek, let me turn it back over to you to go through some of the more detailed items. Thank you again.
Great. Thanks, James. As the committee is aware, Beneficient, the parent company, is a publicly traded company, and as such, we're limited in terms of some of what we can share that's not already public. But despite those legal requirements on us, I do want this committee to know we intend to present as fulsomely as we can today and to answer your questions as fully as we can. So I'll start with important updates, many of which Commissioner Herndon mentioned in his testimony. The first of that being that Brad Heppner did resign as chairman and chief executive officer of the company. I'm not able to provide details regarding kind of the facts underlying that resignation other than what was publicly disclosed, which, as Commissioner Herndon noted, was that questions arose about documents and information that had been presented to the company's auditors in 2019, speaking to the relationship between Mr. Heppner and certain related entities. The audit committee requested a formal interview with Mr. Heppner to ask questions about those documents. He declined to sit for that interview and subsequently tendered his resignation. So a few things about that resignation. I've been asked the question, understandably so, can Ben continue to operate without Brad's involvement? And the answer for you for this committee is a resounding yes. I mean, Brad, incredible visionary, incredibly intelligent person, certainly skilled as a founder, but I want the committee to know that the professionals that built Ben, that have operated Ben, continue to do so. We're committed to the business. We're committed to one another. We're committed to our shareholders, and importantly, as James said, committed to the state of Kansas, and we intend to fulfill that commitment. The board of directors, in light of that resignation, they've always been an active board, but even more so during this transitionary period, meeting regularly with management, providing direction, making sure that we're proceeding to operate in a way that's beneficial for all our constituents. Particularly with James involved, but even before that, I will tell the committee that over the last several weeks, we've had very encouraging interactions with counterparties, some of whom had really declined to do business with Ben previously, and over the last several weeks have re-engaged and indicated a willingness and a desire to pick up the pencil again and talk about transactions. So we're encouraged by that. We've taken this as an opportunity to simplify kind of our approach, simplify some of our offerings, which has, I think, kind of facilitated some of these conversations. And importantly, to really focus, as James said, on our core business, to avoid distractions, to avoid initiatives that, as attractive or exciting as they may be, really dilute our resources, both time, financial and attention to really the business that we're designed to execute on. We're eager to continue dialogue with the commissioner and his team. As James said, we've had disagreements, but I will tell you they work hard. At this last examination, we provided, I believe, over 1,500 documents, so thousands of pages that the examination team had to work through, and many of which are not easy reads. And so, again, we'll have our disagreements. We continue to do that, but we are committed to working with the OSBC and their staff in a collaborative and productive way, certainly. And then an issue I'm sure the committee is interested in, Mr. Heppner, as a part of his resignation, as the commissioner noted, indicated his belief that a wind down of the business was the appropriate course of action. I'd like to iterate that that is Mr. Heppner's view, may still be his view, but it is not the view of the company. It is not the view of the board of directors or of the management team. And while presumably there may be some financial benefit or benefit to Mr. Heppner to a dissolution or a wind down of the business, we do not believe that to be in the best interest of our shareholders, and we intend to continue to operate as we'll discuss today. I do, however, just wanted, let's just take it to the end. And okay, well, what would happen if there was a wind down? And there have been questions about, are the assets that have been delivered to the state of Kansas, are they at risk? And I want this committee to know that those assets are segregated. They are not part of Ben's balance sheet, not part of BFF's balance sheet. They, neither Ben, nor Mr. Hepner, nor I, nor anyone else affiliated with the company has any economic interest in those assets. So they are segregated and secured and would not be affected by any potential wind down of the company. And I wanted the committee to be reassured of that fact. And then finally, as a part of Mr. Hepner's resignation, we were required to delay the filing of our annual report, the 10K that really contains our financials. The audit committee, given the circumstances, have asked the auditors to do a more investigative process than would normally be the case, just to provide assurances as it relates to those financials. And so that is being conducted currently. We expect to be in a position to file that 10K in the very near future. And then Commissioner Herndon also mentioned that the company has received a delisting notice from NASDAQ. The committee may be aware, but just in the interest of disclosure, that delisting notice does not mean an automatic delisting of the company. What it does is informs the company of certain compliance items that it needs to come back in line with. It provides a process to do that as well as a timetable, and so the company is conferring with NASDAQ, working within those prescribed avenues, and we are confident that we will meet those compliance standards and that really the ability to do so is within the company's control. And then I will mention one of the items that I know in prior hearings have been the source of questions is GWG. And as you may recall, GWG was originally a parent company for Beneficient. It went into bankruptcy. As a part of that bankruptcy process, it spurred a variety of litigation. Since our last committee meeting, that litigation has been settled. It's been settled entirely within insurance limits. Did not impact, no insurance of BFF, no assets of BFF were affected by that, but we are encouraged, certainly because that was an overhang, the uncertainty of what does this mean, what could it mean for the company going forward, and the ability to really engage actively with counterparties that would have those concerns, understandably, is now starting to dissipate with that behind us. And so that's another reason that, as James had indicated, there's enthusiasm within the company about the opportunities ahead. As a company, we know we have a lot of work to do. We're committed to doing that. We're not going to overpromise. We are simply going to assure this committee that we're dedicated to working hard. As I hope the committee would appreciate, we have never run from regulation. We have never run from oversight. In fact, we have appeared before this committee as well as other committees within the legislature to actively request additional oversight. We have requested regulations, and so we look forward to continuing those discussions. We look forward, Mr. Chairman, to coming back to this committee at whatever cadence that this committee deems appropriate to provide updates of where we are, but we have been designed to be a regulated entity. We continue to. It's core to our business. And so we would certainly welcome any opportunity to have those discussions. I was going to move into our PowerPoint presentation here in a moment that might answer some questions about the economic growth zone issues, but I did want to, just as a part of the presentation, really respond to a couple of questions. First, as it relates, Representative Williams, to the wage claims. There have been wage claims in Texas that were filed. BFF is not the employer. These are not wage claims against BFF, but rather the employment entity. I will tell you that, unfortunately, the reporting on that was not complete. that while it's a process, as you would understand, where claims are filed, there's administrative hearings, there's appeals process, legal processes. We're at different stages across that spectrum with these claims. In terms of the claims, the company's view is that they're not valid claims, and we have an obligation to our shareholders to defend against claims that we don't believe are valid, and we have done so. And so those, again, remain in that process with no final determination. There was reporting that Beneficient had been assessed penalties in connection with those, and again, at the early stages of the process, there is the opportunity for the Commission to assess a penalty, which it did. In a few of those instances, we have a hearing where you talk about the underlying facts. Those penalties have all been abated, something that was not reported. So I want to, assure the committee that Beneficient, we value our employees. We've got employees. We wouldn't be where we are without people that are just incredibly not only talented, but just with grit to work through the environment we're in. But again, we have to balance that with our obligations to our shareholders, and we're doing that in pursuing the appropriate kind of legal process. But I did want to let you know. The other item that was mentioned, I just wanted to clarify, and we can kind of move into the PowerPoint on this, is the economic growth zone contributions in that 2.5%. And as Rachel indicated, we have delivered that in cash to Commerce. Excited. I just, like all of you, sit there with a smile on my face as Rachel's going through what has been accomplished in the communities that have been positively impacted. There is a piece of the assets that, as Rachel noted, are what are called beneficial interest. They're just beneficial interest in underlying alternative assets. The one correction that I would make is those are not held by Beneficient. They are not on part of Ben's balance sheet. Ben does not control them, right? Now, they are based on trust that Beneficient is a trustee of, but in terms of the beneficial interests that are allocated to Commerce, those are held in the economic growth trust that you see. So we have, just as a quick summary, when customers come on to finance their alternative assets, they designate that 2.5% of that financing will be dedicated to the economic growth zone program. Those 2.5% amounts are first distributed to the Kansas Economic Growth Trust. This is a trust that was formed in collaboration with Commerce as far as, okay, how do we manage beneficial interest that doesn't complicate Commerce's accounting process? And so it's maintaining those as a part of the trust, but distributing cash as it becomes available. And so they're held at that trust. There's an individual independent trustee. Beneficient is not trustee of that trust, who then, on a periodic basis, as cash comes in, distributes that to either the Beneficient Heartland Foundation, which is devoted to charitable initiatives currently in Heston, and then to the Department of Commerce. These entities, both the Beneficient Heartland Foundation as well as the Economic Growth Trust, they're audited annually. As the committee may remember, when we appear in November, we have those audits which are dated as of March 31st, which is the fiscal year end for both of those entities. Given the accelerated meeting today, we don't have those finalized, but as the committee meets in the future, or even in advance of that, as those become finalized, we will certainly provide the committee with copies of those as we have in the past. And the auditors also perform what's called agreed upon procedures, where they go through this allocation that's required under the statute and confirm that the trust has in fact met the statutory requirements in terms of the allocation of those assets. So there's independent oversight to ensure not only the value of the assets, the existence of the assets, but the assets have been distributed as required by law. And I know I've been long-winded, so I'll here in a moment, I'll take a breath and turn it over to Alan. But the last thing that I will mention, because I know it's been a topic we've talked about frequently, is the grocery store in Heston. I will tell you the disappointing aspect of that is that much of what has gone on in terms of progress is unseen, and it's behind the scenes. And particularly, there are about half a dozen people in Heston that are on a grocery store committee. They meet for the last 2 years. They meet every Wednesday. I think they may have missed one Wednesday. They meet every week to review where are we, what is going on, where are we in terms of the land acquisition. There had been discussions, as you may recall, of a local credit union being relocated to a different spot to make room for the grocery store. Been working on those communications, working with architects, engineers. So there is a lot of work that goes on, but unfortunately, unless you're part of that process, the community doesn't see that, and that's truly unfortunate. I'm not going to go through the list, but you have in the materials kind of a list of activities that have occurred. I will tell you that I met with the foundation board yesterday. We have restructured the board. It has always been a community-led board, but given the departure of Mr. Hepner and others, we have addressed the governance of that board to vest more control, more authority, more decision-making process, truly within the community. And I will tell you that the excitement in the room, was measurable, and the meeting went well over an hour beyond the scheduled time as people had ideas. I believe what you will see and what we'll be able to report as we go forward, certainly the original design was incredible and kind of opulent, but I think what you will see going forward is still, a nice facility, but one that is maybe more practical, more realistic in terms of a timetable, one that the funding is not as significant and that will produce more rapid progress, perhaps even within the existing footprint without the need to move the credit union. And lastly, I'll just say that the credit union has been an incredible partner, has volunteered to say, look, we're happy to move. We're happy to stay where we are. We want what's best for this community, and if you can deploy assets in your existing space to create the grocery store, we are fully supportive. So we're, much like with the company, we're getting some renewed energy in that foundation, and I think, and I'm hopeful that this committee will see progress as a result. I appreciate the indulgence of my long-windedness, but I am going to turn it over to Alan to let him go through just BFF and some particulars as it relates to the activities here in Kansas, and then we'll stand, Mr. Chairman, for questions.
Alan, welcome to the committee. It's always great seeing you.
Thank you. I sat long enough, I'm kind of stiff. I'm the operations person for the Kansas TEFI, and as such, I tend to interface with the regulators much more often than a lot of the other folks. But I wanted to really talk about context for a minute, because there's days when I feel like we're being hung by headlines. And if you look at the bigger picture here, we're doing great things. We've thrown some numbers around, and let's just how I drive the, how do I move it? Add up just the numbers that have been used so far. And in terms of assessments, we've paid a shade over $4 million since 2021 in assessments to the state of Kansas. Now, part of that goes to the banking office, and the other part goes to Commerce. And we've heard what Commerce has been doing with some of those funds. The other thing that we really haven't talked about, if we get down into the weeds a bit, are the actual cash distributions that we've made through the Economic Growth Trust. The part of which goes to the foundation in Heston to help them build their grocery store, but also do some other community projects that they have in mind. And then another portion of that flows over to Commerce as well. And those dollars add up to almost $8.5 million that have been paid out so far. We have contributed in terms of valuation of alternative assets of about $11 million. And you've heard Derek talk about how these are held in an assortment of trusts, none of which are Beneficient or our trust company has any interest in. This money, as it turns to cash, belongs to the Department of Commerce and the foundation in Hessen. So you add that up, since we've been started on this project in June of 21, it's a little over $24 million that we're talking about. So when you think about what's going on, think about that $24 million and the good that it's done. This is a project I'm proud of. I've enjoyed working with it. I've enjoyed working with everybody. And we're doing good things. I do want to talk about some of the headwinds that we've had to face. Well, first, examination schedules. We actually have 3 exams roughly every year. One is a BSA exam, that's money laundering, Patriot Act, those kinds of things. We have one that's information technologies, where the state reviews our controls and how we're handling various security matters. And then the compliance one, which is the most recent one. I think the wrap-up date was July 23rd, I understand. And we've had our exit meetings, and without commenting on the exam, we understand that there's maybe going to be a consent order. We haven't seen it. Frankly, we haven't even seen the exam yet, so we're not sure how to respond to that. I feel like a little bit, by implication, there's some serious wrongdoing involved with that. I'm not aware of any. And without getting into the details of the exam, there's not much I can tell you other than I don't feel like any of it goes to the safety and soundness of the company. But we've had headwinds, and I do want to talk about those just a little bit. One of the things that struck me when we started is the cultural differences between commercial banking, trust banking, and our company, which comes out of the private equity world. The things that are important are different. The language that is used is different. And frankly, sometimes the attitudes are different. And it's taken some time for us to get used to that. Now, I'm familiar with it, but most of the people in our organization come out of private equity, and so it's a new world to them. Our expectations and BFF's expectations didn't exactly align. We're working to make that happen. We know we have things we can do to improve, and we're going to do that. We've faced challenging economic conditions. We have historic lows in merger and acquisition activity, which is the liquidity that drives the cash that comes into these alternative funds. Great example is we own a piece of SpaceX. Great company. Fireworks are unimaginable, that they can do, but it's still held in private equity, and we own a piece of it. Capers owns a large piece of alternative investments. This is not something that's new to the investment people in our state. I think 10 to 15% of their assets are alternatives. So, the liquidity that comes from some of this is been challenging for us. I think as we see markets open up again, we'll see liquidity start to come back. Reputational issues have presented a problem for us, and this is where we get hung by the headlines sometimes. The litigation is being worked through. Derek reported on GWG litigation. Media reports, they like headlines, catches my attention, so those kinds of things do present some problems for us. So that being said, $24 million so far that we've been able to contribute to the state, and we would love to do more. I think it's a matter of time. Let us get through some growing problems, and we can move on and have hearings for more commerce and see what they're doing with the money. As far as the state's attitude in terms of, you know, us going away, sometimes I feel like the redheaded stepchild, you know, where we're inconvenient, sometimes we're hard to understand, and we take up their time. But the state's got an obligation, or the state banking department does, is to figure out how to regulate us. We've offered to help. Those offers are usually rebuffed. The whole industry of alternative investments exceeds $20 trillion, that's with a T, and somebody is figuring out how to evaluate these things and analyze them. The Capers has a substantial amount in their portfolio. They've figured it out. I think the state banking department can do the same. It's not impossible. It's a matter of just simply sit down and applying some basics. So that being said, we're proud of what we've done. We think we've got room to improve. We know we do, and we want to. And the change, I think, that you'll see in the coming days will be impressive. I'll leave it at that. You know, if you have questions, never sure what to tell you about our company, so.
Okay, and Mr. Fletcher, is our good friend, former Senator King, going to speak too, or are we ready for questions?
I think we're ready.
Okay. Committee, we are going to open it up for questions for Alan and Derek, anybody with the Beneficient team. I will start with one, and this one's going to be for Derek. Part of the TEFI Act, I believe, established that one member of your guys' board of directors had to be a resident of Kansas.
Yes.
And I know recently there's been some changes on the board. Are you guys in line with that provision now, or do have plans in the future to get in line with that?
Yes, sir. We had a board meeting 2 weeks ago, 21st, in which a Kansas director was appointed.
Okay.
So following the resignations that we'd had previously. So yes, sir.
I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
I believe Senator Owens, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alan, can you provide a little bit of your background in the banking world and your space, maybe a little bit of your bio, and then I have a question for you.
Okay, I started banking on January 2, 1980. Everybody born then? I was a trust officer at First National Bank of Goodland, and moved to Iowa after about 3 or 4 years, and was a trust officer up there in a bank. About that time, a friend of mine had been appointed as the CEO of a troubled bank. It was First National Bank in Harrington. And my partner, Ken Stout, called me up and he said, would you come down? He says, I'm going to need some help. It's a bigger job than just for me. And I was looking at the prospect of another winter in Iowa, where if you think they're bleak here, go to the northern border and see what they're like. So came down. It was supposed to be a one-shot deal. We would get a chance maybe to buy the bank and live out happily ever after. That bank failed, and so we became consultants, and we did that for 20 years. Worked with hundreds of banks all over the United States. I've done some internationally, been to Russia, Baghdad, Yemen, Republic of Georgia, worked with banks over there. And most of them troubled, but not always. And so, you know, my banking career is varied. When it comes to dealing with exams, I've probably sat through more exams than a lot of the regulators have, and understand how that works. Since then, I've been back to Iowa to run a small bank, came back to work in Topeka for a while with CBW Bank, which is a technology play if you're not familiar with them. And then got a chance to teach banking at Fort Hays, which was a lot of fun. And then Derek and Brad tracked me down and talked me into coming over to work for Ben.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. So I just think it's important for the committee to understand your experience, very wide and vast and varied in this industry. So my question simply is, I mean, other than your stints in Iowa, as a Kansan, do you believe Kansas or Kansans are at risk by allowing Beneficient to continue in its current operations?
I don't see how. It's, we're not using taxpayer funds or anything else. As you can see, we're more than paying for our exams. There's nothing good can happen. The worst that could happen is if we go out of business and there's money that gets left on the table that we couldn't provide, you know, for future business.
Very good. And I do have a question for Derek whenever.
Yeah, no, go, please
Derek,
ask it now.
Yeah, Derek. So we talked a bit about, you know, when this originally all kind of came to fruition and we were talking about TEFI and talking about the creation of this industry and passing this legislation, there really was this conversation around it being more than just Beneficient, right? Sir. There being an industry. Yes. Do you still believe, even with all of the headwinds faced, that there is still an industry to be developed in this space?
I do. The challenge, I think, in terms of kind of that coming to fruition is really twofold. One, as Rachel mentioned, having a budget that would enable really the marketing, Senator Fagg, as you had mentioned. The other challenge is just frankly the marketing arm up until this point has been Beneficient, and for the very same reasons that some of the headline items have been problematic as it relates to future business, it's also kind of an impeding factor of our ability to be really a strong advocate in the market. When there's headlines around us, headlines about conflict with the commissioner's office, that and we tried to address some of that you know, with the commissioner's office to reduce the application fee, which we appreciated their leadership in doing that we were hopeful would spur additional applications. But if you do look, and Alan and I have frequent visits about this, across the alternative asset space, the industries that are popping up in various states as it relates to alternative assets, and that can be from digitizing those assets, and we've talked for the committee about that process, but companies that are moving into how do we go from paper to a digital world? How do we tokenize without any kind of crypto? But how do we? So you see these trust companies that are being formed in like Wyoming, for example, Nevada, that are focused on alternative assets. They're not doing the financings that Beneficient is, but you're seeing these new industries all surrounding alternative assets pop up. That we think are certainly complementary, and one that if we're able to adequately market and get the information out about what can be achieved through the TEFI legislation, we think that there is, you know, an attractive message there for the industry.
Derek, can I add one other item?
Please.
One other item, and this is on us because we need to do a better job with the commissioner to demonstrate to him the value of what we do. But the very obvious point is that no new participant's going to come into the industry with the banking commission on record saying that they'd like to repeal the statute. Right? It goes without saying that's no one's going to invest in building a business with that level of uncertainty. So it's on us to do a better job of working with the commissioner and getting through that particular point. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Derek. Thank you.
Yeah, final question for me, and I appreciate the indulgence of the committee. Obviously, this is something that I've been passionate about since I worked on this 4 or 5 years ago. So to be clear, all of the significant lawsuits that we've read in the newspapers, right, that have made headlines, the SEC investigation, those have all either been settled, or in the case of the SEC investigation, they found absolutely no violations, and they've been dismissed as well. So all of those headwinds that you faced over the last 2 years have been resolved in a satisfactory manner. Is that correct?
Those in particular, we do. There is some litigation that hasn't, but those, as you indicated, were the big, question marks and the big, areas of focus for, not only the investing public, but our customers. So yes, the GWG matter, the SEC investigation, that was a long process, but no findings, no action taken, which we were confident would be the case, but it's certainly a painful process to get to that conclusion. But you're right, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I don't know of a publicly traded company out there that doesn't have some level of a lawsuit, but the ones that have really made the headlines, that have created the headwinds, have been resolved, and I want to make sure that the committee was aware of that.
Thank you for that. And I will just comment, as the committee knows, that those certainly are at the Beneficient parent company level, not at the BFF level. So,
Representative Shu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple questions. First one is a really minor one that just kind of came to mind as we were going through this. So it looks like you guys do have office space in Heston, as required by the Act, right? 105 North Main Street.
Yes,
Is that? I was Googling around, and it shows that office space is 1,450 square feet instead of the 2,000 required. Again, this is not a hill I'm willing to die on, but just. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, sir. Across the street, which is, do you recall the address? Yeah, across the street is our conference room, which more than satisfies that 2,000 square foot. So the combination of those two, we didn't have 2,000 square feet at the time in one facility, so we've got offices across the street from one another.
Okay, great. Yeah, and then the second question is just, and this kind of goes back to another question from Senator Faga earlier today, as Alan, you alluded to, and I think you used the word, it would be simple for the OSBC to figure out how to regulate you guys. How would you do it?
How would I regulate it? That's a good question. There's two parts to it. There's the trust part, which is where we really interface with the regulators in terms of some of the things that they criticize. And we have to improve there. We've got work to do. The other part of it, and it's been largely ignored, but the biggest risk factor in this business is the underlying assets, those alternative assets. We spend quite a bit of money and time and resources to value those. We revalue over 1,100 funds every quarter. And that is the real value, and that's the real risk in this organization. And so you start to think of it kind of like a bank, although the assets don't behave like your typical loan where you've got monthly or annual interest in principal payments, but you do have cash flow off of them. It's just a little, you have to predict it. You have to get in and see what those things are worth. And that's where that's not happening. It's, my sense from listening to Commissioner Herndon is he's given up on that issue. It's one of those things that you need to spend some time. So what I'd proposed in the banking world, you get an examination manual. And when I was teaching, I actually used that manual as my textbook. And it walks you through the camels. And so we talk about capital, how you measure it, what it is, what kinds of requirements are there. There's statutory requirements for it. We talk about earnings, liquidity, sensitivity to market risk, all of those things. And you come out then with a result. That hasn't happened, but that's how I would approach it. I think there's ways to do it. I think how you evaluate the alternatives will be different than how you would evaluate a farmer out in western Kansas. But the fundamentals are the same. It's still cash flow.
If I may, and they have access to the underlying assets for you guys? You said it's the biggest risk?
They do. Okay. And all they have to do, they haven't asked for anything in any great detail, but we're prepared to send them that. We also have analysts in Dallas that model our business. We're prepared to make those people available as well. We want them to see this and understand it, because the future of it is going to be good, rational regulation.
Chair Dietrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here. You clearly have some long history in banking and in our state's banking system. So in thinking about TEFI and the kind of an organization that you're with now, what do you think the greatest challenge is for you and your banking background for
in
TEFI?
terms of how our
Just in
TEFI's going to
general.
do? Or
What keeps you up at night?
the industry is...
Alan, if you can, microphone on. Yeah, thank you.
The industry, and you may not feel it, but it is changing in ways that we can't imagine. You know, in the 80s, one of the big fights was disintermediation, where money market funds were coming in, and we were able to eventually fend them off or offer our own. We got some regulatory relief so we could do it. What we're seeing now is the banking industry is being carved up by a host of players. If you want to make a home loan today, chances are you will borrow the money from a private equity group somewhere, a hedge fund. They actually have a bigger piece of that business than the banking industry does. In terms of deposits and deposit gathering, we're back to alternative sources. In terms of business and business development, some of these deals that go to alternative assets, it's a source of capital, it's a source of financing. The banks are cut out of that. The technology changes. You know, if you look at the artificial intelligence and what's happening, you know, it's actually been around for many years, but all of a sudden it gained some traction, and it was like one of SpaceX's rockets. It was off to the moon. And that's what we're seeing. And that has implications for banking, good and bad. You know, a lot of the detail work that a banker has to do in terms of reviewing credit files, evaluating different things, AI can do that. I'm working on a couple of projects with some folks for credit files, you know, evaluate them. You just load the data and away you go. You know, a big problem in banking is staffing, is finding staff. That's what motivated me to go to Fort Hays and teach out there. You're going to see half of the personnel in this state turn over in the next 10 years. They're like me. They're getting old, and you know, we're going to go do other things. So the change in how we respond to it is important. I think to me, BFF is one of those businesses that this is going to be the face of banking in 10 or 15 years, if not sooner.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, so of all the things that you've mentioned and concerns and changes and challenges, is there anything that leads you to believe that Beneficient will not be able to be solvent and move forward?
Well, I'm very optimistic. it's, and I haven't always been, but we are making all of the right steps at the right time. And I feel very good about where we're going right now.
Good. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here.
And a quick follow-up in this, Alan, you can answer this, or Derek, or Mr. Silk online. One of your guys' headwinds you have listed as facing is challenge in economic conditions, historic low M&A, merger and acquisition activity. I know this new administration has been rather open to M&A, where the last presidential administration kind of choked that off. Have you guys seen that reflected in the markets as far as a more welcoming view of mergers and acquisitions?
I'd probably leave that to Derek or James. I watch, what I read about and stuff, because I don't have direct impact on some of the deals that are being done, but we're seeing more activity. Those are liquidity events and that's how these people cash out. So it seems to me it's happening.
Okay. Derek, if you want.
Yeah,
Or
I
again,
can add, I can also mention, the short answer is yes, but these take time, right? The new administration, it's 6 months in, but I think there is an increase in M&A activity in terms of where people are negotiating and beginning to go to market. And the real challenge, or rather the other piece of this, is not just M&A, but it's making sure that the public markets remain attractive as a source of liquidity. It's no secret over the past 10, 15 years, the number of publicly traded companies has greatly dropped. And that's a function, some would say, because of the sort of the regulatory environment, the cost of being public, so to speak. So I think the administration's focus on making the public markets more attractive and less costly for companies as an exit will be very attractive to the market, but it's going to take some time. It's not a first 6 months thing, but I think I would guess in 2026 you would certainly see the benefit from that change in perspective.
I appreciate that. Derek, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I would agree with that, and certainly, I'm maybe a little over-optimistic, thought that it might happen a little sooner at the beginning with the change, but clearly then as we talk about tariffs and there's kind of the trade issues that kind of stymied some of that, as well as there was uncertainty in the market. But no, I agree with James that, it sure seems to appear that things are moving forward, and it just take the time to work through that process.
I appreciate that. Representative King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if this is for Alan or Derek, so maybe both of you stay up there. If we could pull up slide number 15 from the presentation, please. Just want to make sure that I understand this slide here. Slide number 15 of the Beneficient presentation.
Is it the summary?
It is a summary of assets paid and distributed. So there are 4 line items there, with one of them being the total.
Yes, sir.
Let's start with the top line, the $4 million. That is actually cash that has been given to Commerce and the Banking Commission.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The next $8.5 million is in Department of Commerce and BHF. And please explain to all of us, just to make sure we understand, BHF is?
Beneficient Heartland Foundation.
Okay. So there's $8.5 million there.
Correct.
If Commerce and the Heartland Foundation would want to liquidate those assets and get that $8.5 million plus maybe a haircut, depending on the transaction or the program there, could they do that on their own today?
So, Representative King, I will mention that 8.5 is cash, or has been cash. Okay. But to your point, yes, sir, the kind of the 11.8 million that's listed there are beneficial interests. And so in and of themselves, theoretically, you could go out and sell. It'd be challenging to find, a buyer for that. If the underlying assets are sold, So let me kind of put it in a little, let's say that beneficial interest is 2.5%. Going out and trying to sell a 2.5% interest in an alternative asset could be challenging. But if the entirety of the holding were to be sold, your ability to attract a buyer and, more importantly, a more attractive price. So it can happen. It just wouldn't be it would take more than just commerce to effectuate that, just from a practical perspective.
So the second line item, the 8.5 million.
Yes, sir.
That's in Commerce and Heartland Foundation.
Correct.
What is the breakdown of that? How much would be in Commerce and how much would be in Heartland Foundation approximately?
That is a good question. I can get you that detail. The statute sets out, based on kind of a waterfall, that the first amount of 2.5% amount gets heavily weighted to Commerce, less to the foundation, and then those percentages change as the dollar amount increases. I'd have to get you that breakdown of what that is, but I think in total we had shown that Commerce, I think, has received over 3.7.
Yes.
But
Yeah, so I'm not interested in what they've received. I'm interested in this 8.5 million that hasn't been received.
Oh, that
yet.
has been received. That 8.5 million has been distributed to those two entities. So there's nothing being held of that 8.5 million of cash. So these are cash distributions that have been made in aggregate to Commerce and to the foundation. So these are cash dollars that have been distributed to those entities.
So is the $4 million included in the 8.5 million?
No, sir. So in
Then
total,
why is Commerce Department only issued $3 million in grants then? What am I missing here?
And that, go ahead.
The sources for the funds that go to Commerce, part of it comes from the annual assessment that we pay, the $1 million. Then the other part comes from the charitable contributions. As we transact business, 2.5% of that goes into a trust, and then that gets split up according to the statutory waterfall.
And Representative, if I may, if you go to slide 14, I believe it has the breakdown you're looking for on assets transferred to Kansas, beneficial interest and alternative assets between Commerce and the Heartland Foundation.
Okay, so slide 4, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
slide 14 shows the 11.8 million. I understand that, but I don't understand the 8.5 million.
So the slide previous to that, 11 million, I don't have a number here, but thank you, Mr. Chairman. It does show I will say that the 2.
Number 13, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The 2.7 million was distributed to Commerce when the TEFI bill was first enacted. That 5.7 amount has been allocated between the foundation and Commerce, and I'd have to get you that breakdown, but that breakdown occurs pursuant to the statute, and the statute allocates how much goes to Commerce and how much goes to the charitable initiative, the foundation. But I can get you the breakdown of that 5.7 as between those two parties.
Okay, and that is cash?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and where is that cash being held at currently?
It has been distributed, so, Commerce has utilized theirs for the seed program, and then the Heartland Foundation, has cash, or it's used cash as a part of the grocery store acquiring the properties on Main Street, et cetera. So those entities hold the cash. Beneficient doesn't. They're not held in trust. This is what has actually been distributed to Commerce and to the foundation, in addition to the $4 million.
Just feels like there's some cash sitting out there that hasn't been allocated by Commerce Department, then, unless I'm missing something. So
I will get you that breakdown so that you'll have that, and we can show that allocation between.
And we can have Rachel come up here real quick as well if she wants to add in.
Hopefully I can clarify a bit or just outline the payments that we have received. So if you look on that cash contributions to Kansas, I think it's slide 13. it gets you to that 8.4 million total. You'll see that we received that 2.7 million out of that in cash. And so that is the second payment that Commerce received in regards to TEFI and to the seed. Prior to that, in the summer of 2021, we received that $250,000, which is that 25% of their $1 million application fee. Then following that, in the summer of 23, so July of 23, we received that $250,000, which again is that 25% of the $1 million annual assessment fee. In August of 23, we received $36,285.03, and this is that required distribution amount that's equal to that 2.5% of their transactions. Then in March of 24, we received $47,740, which again is that 2.5% of their transaction fees. And then in July of 24, we received that $250,000, which is the quarter, that 25% of their annual assessment fees. So cash that we've received from that 2.5 share of their transactions is $83,000. Yeah, $83,025.
So Rachel, excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Rachel, on slide 13 there, the $5.778 million number.
Yes, that's all in that trust, that Kansas TEFI Economic Growth Trust.
That you have some access to or you have no access to?
We don't have any access to it. It would have to be sold or liquidated for us to then get access to that cash.
These are the actual cash distributions.
To the trust.
No,
yes, to the trust.
Yeah, to
this
the
is
trust.
Yes, this is all
okay,
to Commerce.
And then that's been distributed, but we don't have the breakdown here.
Not to Commerce, no.
No, part of it did, according to the waterfall.
Well, we'll give you guys just a second opportunity to talk offline to figure that out. I do want to follow up with, I think I kind of know where you're going on this, so I'll ask Derek. Beneficial interest in alternative assets, that 11.894 million, that's currently in there.
Yes, sir.
3 months from now, knock on wood, everything goes south with you guys, and you guys do decide that you need to wind down operations. What is the threat to that account, I guess, if you guys do wind down operations? How do we go about liquidating our percent share in that and getting these funds distributed?
Yeah, so there's no threat insofar as the ownership of those assets. So it wouldn't be a part of Ben's assets or that process. So the state would then be looking at, do we continue to hold those assets and let them monetize, because those are not, again, they're not Ben assets. These are managed by third-party professionals, much like, as Alan mentioned, capers. And so do we hold them? Do we think they're good investments to hold? Do we let them just monetize over time and kind of wind themselves down as companies go public and assets are sold? Or do we go out and look to find a buyer that's willing to acquire those interests in those underlying assets? And so there would be both of those options available to the state, depending on what the particular viewpoint was at that time.
Yeah. So I guess the individual or the entity making that decision, is it the state of Kansas, or is it the trustee, or is it the company that's managing the?
So it would be, as it's currently constructed, the trustee. Okay. But as we've visited with Commerce, at any time that Commerce wants their share of the beneficial interest, those can be distributed. So they're being held now in the trust just to simplify their accounting process and reporting process, but those are assets that can be assigned at any point, and the same is true with respect to the foundation. Okay. Yeah. that could be assigned as well. So the trustee is there really for administrative convenience and efficiency, not a requirement, and so the state or the foundation could alter that structure in the future at whatever juncture they deem appropriate.
So just to clarify, if, again, that this nightmare scenario for you guys does go forward, the Heartland Foundation can do the same thing, go to the trustee at any time and say, hey, we're ready to liquidate our percent of these assets.
It can. Again, there's the practical question of, is there a buyer? And what, if there is, what is the discount rate that a buyer might impose on buying an asset that has kind of that structure? But could certainly seek to do so, yes, sir.
Okay. And then Senator Owens, did you want to add to this conversation?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, so of that nearly $12 million in beneficial interest, that continues to earn a return on those assets, and then those assets, that return is distributed either to the foundation or to Commerce for distribution.
Correct.
So as with any asset, if you liquidate an asset, you get to spend that money once. If you hold that asset, it continues to earn, and you get to distribute it over and over.
Exactly. So it's a pure investment decision. Again, one that Capers looks at in terms of to what extent do we retain these alternative investments? Is the return profile of that asset compelling based on what else we could do if we were to sell or liquidate? So, but you're right, yes, sir, there is a return associated with those investments.
Okay. Representative King, we'll circle back to you now. Have your questions been answered? Do we, Commerce, did we get that discrepancy worked out?
I think what would be helpful, which I'm committed to do, is provide you with a breakdown, because what kind of complicates it is this $2.7 million that went to Commerce in '22. There were in-kind assets, and rather than at that time providing Commerce with in-kind assets, they were entirely funded with cash to allow them to deploy the seed program. So that caused more cash going to Commerce at that time, more beneficial interest going to the Heartland Foundation, which impacts then how these monies are allocated. So I think, if it's okay and appropriate, we can break this down granularly to show here's the amount, here's where it was distributed, here's the total cash received by each of those entities, so that you can track that more easily than me bumbling through it
And
today.
we can get that distributed to the entire committee as
Yes,
well.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, I think my main question now is focused on slide 13, the $5.778 million.
Yes, sir.
Where is that at, and how is that? What is the Heartland Foundation, and what is the Commerce? And
you bet. I will get you what's been distributed to Commerce, what's been distributed to the foundation, and what, if any, is the balance at the trust level, so that you can see those dollars and tie those together.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Senator Fack.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You guys, the committee's done a good job, a lot of good questions here. You had all mine. I marked most of them off. How many employees does Ben currently have?
We have about 57 total.
57.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I thought we might just talk a little bit on market environment. We talked about the change in Washington. When we started this up, we went through COVID.
Right.
We had a lot of challenges through that period of time. So thank God we're still here talking about this,
Yes, sir.
is what I would say. So I want to make that comment. The thing I wanted to make sure that we understood is why we have this trust that we put this into. Why doesn't it go directly to Commerce? You might talk about that a little bit.
Yes, sir. So at the outset of the TEFI legislation, we sat down with representatives of Commerce to explain there's cash, there's beneficial interests. Those can be distributed to Commerce directly. And the discussion was, I'm not sure that the Commerce Accounting Department would at that time know how to account for those, how to track those. And so the discussion was to create a trust that would hold those interests really for both the foundation and, because we thought it was a good idea from the foundation perspective, hold those for the benefit of both Commerce and the foundation, that would go through the allocation process, both of the beneficial interest as well as the distributions that subsequently occurred, have that audited by a third-party auditor. But Senator Fagg, to your question, at any point, if Commerce said, look, we do have a comfort level with how we could account for this internally, and we would prefer to hold that directly, and when distributions are to be made, rather than coming up to the trust level where it's then distribute kind of directly to us, that can be done at any point. But it was really put in place as just a kind of an administrative efficiency and convenience originally for commerce, and then the foundation thought, well, that's a great idea, so that we don't have to account for it either if we've got a party that's willing to do that. And so both entities have relied on that, but either can make a change at their, at their discretion.
Another comment was alternative assets, the market today. Did I hear 23 trillion?
I believe that was the figure.
Folks, 23 trillion with a T.
I think the number I was using was 21. I mean, I hate to be rounding $1 trillion, but
Yeah.
Just a rounding error.
and that is the global marketplace.
Yes.
And I'd like to add a point out to that. That's just about half our national debt right now, just
Yeah.
to put that in perspective.
That's a big number. And I think you've answered this, but the uniqueness of what we've set in place with our program, there still should be a great niche for that if we can get this rolling.
It is, and I think it plays into the next iteration of banking as we know it.
Okay. So I would say ask Derek, has Ben willing to work with Commerce on marketing ideas?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We certainly are.
And has Ben willing to work with the OSBC on ideas for a rating system for examination process?
Yes, sir, we are.
Kicking around ideas?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Senator Corson, I forgot you were here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is Ben willing to pay for those marketing initiatives, or is that something you'd be wanting to use taxpayer dollars for out of the Commerce budget?
So the kind of the marketing aspect was the use of Commerce's 2.5% amount. And so from that standpoint, in terms of this is part of the funding that we've discussed that's been provided. I think what the discussion that should be had is, should that budget or should that allocation as it relates to Commerce be modified to provide more funding out of these assets for Commerce to use for that purpose? And we would certainly be supportive of those discussions to kind of reallocate dollars to ensure that they have the funding that wouldn't come out of taxpayer funding.
Cool. Derek, and again, Mr. Silk can feel free to answer this as well, or Alan. In the OSBC's testimony, he basically says, again, recommends withdrawing the charter, repealing the act, other than the follow-up on Senator Owen's question earlier about the seed grants and that money coming in. If we were to repeal the charter and the TEFI Act, would you guys be able to still conduct business?
No, sir, not in the way that, as Commissioner Herndon mentioned, there's certainly industries that deal with alternative assets that don't need to be regulated, don't need a charter. Given the nature of our business, how we conduct the business, the charter is essential to that, and without the charter, we would not be able to operate our business. And so that would certainly be an item that would precipitate, the considerations of a wind down, simply because we would not be able to operate without that charter.
Can you go into just a little bit more detail of why that charter is necessary?
Sure. So there's a few aspects to that. Number one, certainly in dealing with individuals or other counterparties that are looking to sell their assets, right? If you come to me, an individual that has no duty to you whatsoever, and say, Derek, what are you willing to pay me for my assets? I'm going to look and say, okay, well, what is Chairman Hoheisel's situation, right? Or is there financial distress? Are there issues there that might allow me to come in and lowball that process? Contrast that if you come to a fiduciary, right, that has a methodology for pricing the asset, can say, we have a duty to you to make sure that we are fully transparent with you and how the pricing works. the consideration you're receiving so that you have full information, and you may decide, I don't like this deal, and walk. And that's a risk of being a fiduciary. But at the same time, you know, our experience has been that instills confidence in you to transact with us because we're not there to take advantage of a situation that might otherwise exist. The second component of that is kind of by virtue of having that charter. It enables the company to be a publicly traded company in terms of public company status. And as you know, which is certainly proved to be more challenging given the stock price and performance, but that's been a form of consideration that the company uses to provide an individual or an institution that's looking to exit, where they can get publicly traded stock or the right to convert into publicly traded stock and time their liquidity, you know, event, even so far as to being able to do tax planning. So you get an asset that you can convert to cash through the public markets. So it's an essential component of us being a public company and being able to offer that consideration, which affects our cost of capital, you know, and makes it easier to operate. So without those, you know, we risk the willingness of a third party to transact with us out of those concerns, and we lose the ability to use kind of public equity as a form of consideration, which is central.
Okay. Senator Fack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had one more quick question for Derek. Derek, the money that we've made with Ben that goes to the state,
Yes, sir.
has most of that come from people outside of our state?
Yes, sir.
So the money we've earned is money from outside our state?
Yes, sir. There have been, as I've been aware of, one or two that I'm familiar with that either are Kansas residents but the lion's share have all been out of state. Yes, sir.
Representative Osmond.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony today. I'm looking to try to better understand, if you pardon the pun, what the benefit is to TEFI to you. We've seen evidence here that you've paid, you know, $24 million in various fees, cash payments, alternative assets to Kansas and other associations. Thank you very much. You have to come here on an annual basis and deal with us and or the banking industry and the Banking Commission. I understand that there is a pool out there. There's a potential out there, and you've talked about that, but I'm just, none of that seems to have translated to, as far as I can tell, influx of cash to your business. It certainly hasn't helped your stock price. And as we look at any other for-profit business that has the potential to come in and work with TEFI, nobody has done so. So what is it that you see that everybody else is missing?
That's a great question. So, you know, I think in terms of the business opportunity, right, what we've not been able to do is scale the business like we had hoped. And much of that, Representative, is due to some of the headwinds that we've faced. But the attractive business side for us is, number one, if individuals do come to us or institutions come to us with these alternative assets that they want to dispose of, they don't want to hold them long-term, we're able to finance those at attractive rates to the company where there's a spread created, right? So you come to us and we may offer you 75 cents on the dollar for the value of your assets, so you're not having to wait a decade to receive those yourself. And as Senator Owens mentioned, with those assets, there's a return. And so for us, if we're able to pay 75 cents and that asset monetizes over time to 105% of the current value, there's a spread and an economic benefit that exists there. On top of that, then these assets are held in trust. This is not something that either the customer pays or Kansas pays, but there's a fee that is generated, so we have fee income from that. So there's economic benefits to the company of being able to provide these services. Obviously, as we've talked about, one of the impediments to that, in addition to the headwinds that we faced, is the capital market position, which has dried up in terms of liquidity to really historic lows in the alternative asset space. So our belief is once that normalizes through kind of restoration of the capital markets, we're going to start seeing that liquidity come in, which allows us to acquire more assets, some with cash, some with equity, that allows us to continue to build that balance sheet where after a period of time, our financings are such where we have a large collateral portfolio that produces a healthy return for the company and for its shareholders. As to others not coming in, you know, again, I won't, the truth of the matter, they haven't come in. I've had conversations with certain individuals that expressed an interest. That obviously has not manifested itself, but every person that I've talked to sees the attractiveness. I think, as we've talked about before, there are reasons as to why they're a little uncertain about the industry. One, just because we're the spokesperson and we do have some of these headwinds we've dealt with. Number two, uncertainty about is the TEFI law going to remain in place. There was comments about the size of the application fee, which was $250,000, and people were like, I don't know that I can afford or am willing to spend that. The Commissioner's office addressed that to make that more palatable. But I think it's largely in part to it's relatively unknown and really the need to go out and market that and market study it. You know, I mean, I encourage Commerce with any funding they receive in the future to go out and test it. And they can test whether our assessment of the attractiveness of this legislation and the viability and the benefits to those in the alternative asset space play out when there's a marketing campaign that we can actually look to be able to make that assessment. Yes, sir.
Committee, do we have any further questions? Seeing none, Derek, Allen, Mr. Silk, thank you guys for joining us. I do want to say, Derek, it is a little calming to hear you guys emphasize your commitment to Kansas. I know that the former CEO, he's kind of the reason that there was these seed grants and the thought process in the grocery store in Heston. And, you know, when he's moved on and there's not that link to Kansas, it's like, well, how is this going to impact? Are we going to stay focused on what was promised to us with the seed grants, with the grocery stores? So I'm glad to hear that you guys are reaffirming your commitment and that perhaps we have a more practical idea of a grocery store in Heston, Kansas.
Yes, sir. And Mr. Chairman, I'll tell you that I made those same assurances to the foundation yesterday during the meeting. And while it was kind of Brad's thought process and kind of brainchild for that program, everyone in the committee, or on the committee in the company, has bought into that, is excited about it. We're, you know, kind of at a distance, not being in Heston, but we want a grocery store there as much as anyone. So I did express to them we're committed to what we said we were going to do. We're going to fulfill what we said we're going to do. And again, I'll make that same commitment here to this committee in terms of the state at large.
I appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for joining us. All right, committee. So we've heard a lot of testimony today. A couple different routes we can go. So I kind of have a thought in my head, and I'm going to put it out there. And then after some discussion, if anybody has some discussion, I will make a motion. I believe it would be prudent for us to come back at a later date. Down the road, obviously, there's still some changes happening within Beneficient. They kind of need to still have some time to get their legs underneath them. I believe there's a little bit more information out there that we need to gather as a committee. The LCC assigned us 1 day for the Oversight Committee. We're using that day today. However, I have been in contact with leadership. They have been open to granting us another day. I also chair the CAPERS, or the Pensions, Investments, and Benefits Committee. And when I went to the LCC to get my days for that. I requested 2 days, and that was my mistake. I actually only need 1 day. So the thought process is, especially with leadership, is I can take that second spare day that I have for the pensions interim committee, change that to a day for this oversight committee, and it won't cost the taxpayers any extra money because that day's already been out there. So that's my thought process on this. I think it'd be prudent for us to come back maybe late October-ish. I know leadership wants all the interim committees kind of wrapped up by November. So I think that's enough time for us to get further information for Beneficient to kind of weigh the waters a little bit, get their legs under them, and come back in October, see what the progress is with Beneficient. And at that point, we can make recommendations to the 2026 legislature, which is something that this committee can do. So those are my thoughts. I will open up the floor to any discussion on this. Yes, Chair Dietrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that's a very prudent approach to being able to be able to collect more information, give Beneficient the opportunity to continue on with what they're doing. May I ask if that's enough time for them to be able to come back? Do you know?
We can ask. I'm just thinking ahead as far as leadership really doesn't want us going into November and definitely not December. They've been pretty hard the last few years on getting things wrapped up pretty early. So, I mean, Derek, is that, do you think late October, is that something that you guys could handle?
Yes, I mean, we'll be here when this committee would like for us to be. You know, again, it'll be, you know, how much in the way of development. We can certainly give you kind of an update of where we are, but you know, as you can appreciate, in terms of executing on business, you know, those timetables, it's hard to predict. But I'm willing to come back and give you an update as are the rest of the team and at whatever, you know, timetable and cadence you'd like for us to.
I appreciate that. Senator Fack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with the Vice Chairman on, you know, the timetable, and I would ask, and I like your idea, so I would ask that we put that off just as far as we can, that leadership will allow us. That's what I would say.
I fully intend on doing that. In my head, I'm just using late October because of their edict that let's get stuff wrapped up. But if leadership grants us more time, I definitely don't want to get into the holidays. I don't want to go past Thanksgiving. So if leadership gives us a few more weeks and says, hey, beginning mid-November, feel free to meet, I am perfectly open to doing that. But I definitely don't want to get past Thanksgiving. Any other discussion, committee? Okay, and so I can make this request of the LCC myself as chair, but I think I would rather do it with unanimous consent of the committee by the committee. So I will make my motion that we ask the LCC, and I got a second already without even knowing what I could have said Medicaid expansion and Owen seconded it. Man. I will make the motion that we petition LCC to give us another oversight day to meet, and that's a unanimous consent by the committee to do that. So that is my motion. That is a second by Representative Owens. One other thing, I'm sorry, he's always representative in my heart. One other thing I actually would like to do when we meet again, though, is work on getting a representative from the Heartland Foundation up here, too. I think that would be very prudent to hear kind of their view on where they're going, especially with the grocery store and stuff. So I think that will be helpful for the committee if we could arrange that. So with that, any closing comments before we vote? Seeing none. All those in favor, aye? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes, and without anything else for the good of the committee, we are adjourned.